Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast with your host, Thomas Malpass, where we are on a mission to help the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in their everyday lives. Through deep conversations and connection, tune in because we are all on this journey of life together. Take us back and share some experiences that make you who you are.
Ooh, I love that question. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I was really looking forward to getting to meet you and speak to you personally. But there were a couple of experiences I had as a child that most definitely has affected who I am. So one was I struggled with reading until I was in 5th grade. And that was a big one. I would never want to be called on in class because I struggled to read. I went out to a lot of tutors and things like that. There was a specific method that helped me in 5th grade, and that has actually been my life as an adult, which we could get into later if you want. But another thing that really affected me as a kid was that I really felt that like I didn't fit in. And many levels. Like I didn't dress like everyone, I didn't have the food like everyone, and my family was just different, and I felt very different. And for a long time, it really affected me. I really struggled with making friends and was bullied and all those sort of things until probably like the end of 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade, as my reading had improved and a lot of other areas in school improved, my confidence also went up drastically. And I was like, I actually don't care what people think. And it took time like for me to get there, but I was like, okay, I'm just not thinking and I'm just being who I want to be. And at that time I became like the weird person, but in a very different way. Like up until then I was weird and like no one wanted to be friends with me. Then I became like weird and like the cool type of person. And it has like you said, affected me drastically. And I continue to hold that train of thought and perspective on life of just not caring what other people think and doing what I need to do. And yeah.
Why don't you think you fit in like before 6th, 7th grade? What was the main things you were getting bullied for?
Yeah, so there was quite a bit. So first of all, my mom was Israeli, and so I didn't fit in like with everybody else. Um, and because she came into America, like she was a foreigner, she wasn't as much like assimilated, I guess, right? And so like she would dress me as a kid
Mm.
in specific ways, and I would like never have those clothes as a kid, or even like the food we'd have in the house would be
Yeah.
different, things like that. And so that was a big thing, and it most definitely affected many areas. Another thing was just the way like I held myself and the way I spoke. Like I don't know if you see like I make like big mouth
What?
movements and things like that. And like now I just like I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like I don't care, it's fun. But like as a kid, like I got made fun of that, like that is how I spoke, and like and it was painful,
Like
like
you're
at
like
heart.
animated.
What? What do you say?
You're like a little animated.
Yeah. a little
Like
a little animated is like a few volumes down, maybe like very animated, right? Like they always tell me I can't play poker because it's just like written all over my face.
no, but that I'm glad you like embraced when you started to gain confidence growing up. You started to embrace more of who you are and you became more unapologetically yourself, which is it's good. I think more and more people should do that because people they could be hiding in the dark and are afraid to be their true selves. And I think you learned at a young age and in retrospect, reflecting back on that, that it's okay to be yourself and nobody's opinions is going to change who I am.
100% correct. 100% correct. It took time as a kid. It was like many painful years. Um and then even once I made the decision till it actually happening. But I'm super glad I did. Comparatively, as I speak to more and more adults, I think I've started doing it earlier compared to other people, which simply had to happen as a result
Mhm.
of like my experiences that it just caused me to learn earlier. I guess that's one of the benefits of
Mhm.
challenges. Um, but yeah, we as adults don't always live our lives for others, for friends, for social media, for what society thinks we should be doing, until we eventually learn that people don't actually care, and the people that do care are not the people that you want in your lives.
Yeah, you gotta be surrounded by people that support you and are genuine, because it's not about the number of friends, it's about the quality, you know? And that's that could really make a profound impact on how you show up.
Yeah, I will say on the number and quality. I personally have very few friends, but very very high quality close friendships with those who do I do consider friends. I have found though that that's not for everyone. As in, it really depends on your personality and what you like to do with friends and what you need to do with friends. And some people um, do need some friends that are, it's a lower quality friend, but this is a friend that you are just going to hang out with, you're just going to get drinks with, type of things. Right or wrong, I'm not saying what it is, but most definitely what I can say, like for a fact, there is nothing like having that deep friend. So even if you do have many friends that are, I guess you we could call them lower quality or lower quality relationship, um, then at least make sure that you do have some friends where
Just don't point them out. Just don't point out who those friends are.
right. But just make sure
It's like,
you
yeah, you're part of my low quality friends. You just stay over here and
have yeah, like you, I'll wish you happy birthday, but like that's about it, right? Or we could go to this game together, but like I'm not telling you what's actually going on in my life. But yeah, but that's what we do. We actually tend to do that, whether we label it out loud. We do just tend to have those low quality friends. So make sure you pick one or two high quality ones.
I think that that's just more pronounced in like you said, our personality types. I think extroverts probably have more of those versus introverts, because I'm personally an introvert and I'd rather just not have any low quality friend. I'd rather go hang out by myself versus bring along a low quality
Like me,
friend.
literally like me. And I take it one step further. Like even when I go out
Yeah.
with friends, I always needs to be with just one person. I'm not saying like I won't ever go out with two
Mm,
or more, but like for me to actually enjoy it, like the times that I enjoy most is when it's just me and one other person. And that way that relationship and those conversations can go really deep.
hmm. Yeah. So what got you into brain engineering? Well, first off, what is brain engineering?
Yeah, so essentially, brain engineering is helping you create new neuron connections in your brain. So like I like to think of it as like roads, right? So if you have like one road going in one direction, another road going another direction, then an engineer comes and says like, hey, like if we add a road here and there, um, it will help out the traffic situation. We'll be able to get more people to more places faster, things like that. And that's essentially what we're doing in your brain. We're creating new roads, new neuron connections in your brain, so that way you can get things done faster. You can be more productive, you can be more efficient, and more effective. Um, so to answer your second question on how I got into it, how I got into it was actually in fifth grade. That thing that helped me with those
Mm.
reading was this brain engineering.
I think of brain engineering as like, have you heard of neuroplasticity? Yeah, like doing new things and learning more and more, like never stop learning. It continues to build more neuroplasticity because your brain is somewhat malleable. It's like it could be shaped a little bit, and the more you learn, and like whatever read, and like I know like hand-eye coordination sports bring it out. Um, that that's what I think of when I think of brain engineering.
Yeah, that's most definitely like the general term. So most definitely what I do falls under that, right? Um, we need the fact that our brains can change and always growing, always learning. All that falls under neuroplasticity. And then I just help people with specific part of the neuroplasticity, right? Because there's so much, there's endless amounts you can learn, endless you can do. So specifically, I help people either with the growth mindset or with improving their three phases of thinking and their 28 thinking skills. Um, that's like I guess a subcategory of neuroplasticity.
So how do you do it?
How we do it? We essentially,
Yeah, how do you do it? How do you are you allowed to tell us how you
yeah,
do it?
sure. I mean, I could explain it in general, and then we could go deeper on specific
Yeah,
aspects if
yeah.
you want. But essentially, we do specific exercises to work on specific parts of your brain because we there are three phases of thinking. We have input where we take in the information. Right now you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to this information and you're taking in the information. Okay? You walk into a messy room that you need to clean, you're taking in the information of what's this messy room that you need to clean. Then we have the second phase, it's called elaboration. This is where we process it. So you're listening to this and you're like saying, how does this relate to things I know? What is new? How does this apply to me? Right? Or in our cleaning room example, your brain starting to think like this goes there, the garbage goes in the garbage, etc. Then we have the third phase, the output. Output is where you tell the world what you do with that information. So after you finish listening to this podcast, what are you actually going to do? Or if you're cleaning the room, you actually
Mm,
cleaning and you picking up a piece of garbage and putting it in the garbage or reorganizing a shelf is the output. Okay, so those are the three phases of thinking: input, taking in the information; elaboration, processing it; and output, where we tell the world we know what we know. Within each one
mm,
of those phases, there is a set amount of thinking skills. These are foundational thinking skills. Now, naturally, we all have stronger thinking skills and weaker thinking skills, but those weaker ones make it challenging for
mm.
us to do what we want to do. So to answer your question, what I do
Yeah.
is when I work with clients is do specific brain exercises. They essentially look like fun sheets that work on these specific thinking skills to make it easier for them. Does that make sense?
You said you you have these working sheets that help with how they think, basically?
Yeah, it's like these fun sheets. Maybe it might be a little bit easier for me to give an example and then I could explain how these fun sheets work, how these brain
Yeah,
sheets work.
yeah.
And then I could also give you examples of how you can do it even if you don't work with me, like even if you don't have these exercises. Okay. So
Mhm.
Um, let's go back to this messy room, for example, okay? If you walk into a room, have you ever walked into a messy room and it is so messy that your brain just goes out, you find yourself going out and closing the door instead of actually cleaning the room? Now, this is something that's like super common that I hear very often. Like people get
It's,
overwhelmed.
like, overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. It's that
Yeah.
overwhelming. There's like way too much here. Like, I don't even know how to do this. Okay. And so what happens is your brain, why is it getting overwhelmed? It's coming from a specific thinking skill called clear perception. Actually, it's the very first thinking skill in our phase of input of taking in information. Clear perception is how we use our five senses to take in the information. So when you are looking at something, when you're hearing something, how is your brain taking it in a clear and organized way? So if you're looking in this room and there's laundry
Mhm.
and there's garbage and there's papers and there's pens and all those stuff, is your brain just like it looks like a mess and a mush and it just like wants to go out? Or is it starting to like
Mhm.
list out the items, see the things, understand what happened here? Okay. If you get overwhelmed, it's a very clear
Mhm.
sign that it's coming out as a mush because if it's coming in a mush, because if it was organized, you won't be so overwhelmed. You could just know what to do. So that is the weak
Yeah.
thinking skill of clear perception. So how I would improve it when I'm working with a client is we have these fun sheets. Essentially they're full of dots. They have like a bunch of dots in it, and they're shapes, and you have to find those shapes within those dots, very specific shapes. It couldn't just like be anything. It has to look exactly like the model. There's quite a few like there's a few characters that like, you have to follow to be able to find these shapes. Now people who struggle with this thinking skill of clear perception, when they look at those dots, they literally say it's overwhelming. Like right before I got on this call, I was just in a session, and that was what he said. He was like, yeah, this page just looks way too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
That's clear perception. Okay. The same way that he's going to approach this paper is the same way that he's going to approach life. So when you see this paper and instead of getting overwhelmed,
Yeah.
but you take that moment to just like stop and think, what's going on here? What do I see? Training that brain, talking about neuroplasticity, right? Like you're making those neural connections in your brain. You're training your brain to, instead of getting overwhelmed, to collect the data in a clear and organized way and then figure out the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
page. Then you can do that when you clean your room. Personally, what I like to do when I tell people who are just like listening to this, if you want to try it at home, is because we take in information through our five senses. You, whenever you're very overwhelmed and not sure what to do, go through your five senses and list out the information you're taking in through your five senses. So, what do you see? And list out a whole bunch of things you see. What do you hear? And list out a whole bunch of things you hear.
Mm-hmm.
All the five senses. And what happens is when you list them out, you literally take in the information. It slows your brain down and it helps you, instead of like seeing the whole thing is just a mess, but as clear, organized information of what's happening on in here. And then you can go ahead and do what you need to do.
What's after clear perception, or is that the main? That's like the main one, clear
So
perception, or
actually, in our first phase of thinking and input, there's actually 8 thinking skills. So another one in that taking in the information is called labeling. So that's using calling items, ideas, concepts, things like that by their right label. Often we'll like tell people put this there. What's this? What's there? Right? Or you're like, or sometimes actually this happens a lot with adults, and why I personally believe over 50% of arguments happen is you're both talking about the same
Mhm.
thing, but you're using different words. You have different definitions to describe the same thing. So if I tell you, hey, we need to improve our communication, but what you think of when you say communication and what I think of when we say communication is two different things. We are talking about two different things with the same label. And that is creates a lot of arguments. Even though we're talking about
I agree.
communication, right?
Yeah, because it's like you don't. It's like a common form of miscommunication. It's like you say one thing, but I interpret it a different way. You don't. It's like, no, this is what I mean, but it's like, no, I interpreted the like a wrong way, you know.
Exactly.
And by the way, I took your assessment thing.
Yeah. So,
I was expecting like a results page or something, but I guess it was cool to see. Most of them I put like three. Most of them I put like 3 to 4, and some of them I put uh 2.
yeah.
So I don't know what kind of indication that means, but I did realize a lot of the questions were about focus. I seen the labeling one, organization, questions like that.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm just going to explain for everyone listening. The assessment goes through the 28 thinking skills that I was talking about within these 3 phases. And when you see, like you said, you don't get a result in the end. You mark yourself for each one on a scale from 1 through 5, one being really weak, 5 being really strong. And the reason why you don't get a result is purpose, is for a very specific purpose. Because there is no such thing as being perfect at any thinking skill. And so I don't want you to take the assessment And even if you get a 5 at, let's say, systematic search, doesn't mean there's no room for you to improve it. And so it's just a place for you to see which one of my thinking skills need the most help, which ones are pretty strong, which ones can I use to leverage other ones, and to give you a general idea of where you are. Makes sense that you
Mhm.
labeled a lot of them three. Three is like when it's not weak and it's not strong, it just like is, and it like helps us to get us through our day.
Mhm.
Um, Usually when something is weak or strong, it's more like prevalent in our life. Like we know we're really good at visualizing, or we know we're really good at directions and
Mhm.
like orientation in space, or the opposite. Like we have a really hard time with working memory and or considering another person's perspective, etc. If you want,
Well, the labeling part was kind of iffy to me because I do organize, like, my laptop very well, like, I have different labels and folders and, like, content and everything, but when it comes to, like, generalization, I don't use labels that great,
yeah, yeah.
if that makes
So where
sense.
did you put yourself for labeling?
I think I put
Yeah,
3
that makes
because it's like I'm kinda like, when it comes to, like, work, but, like, when it comes to day to day, like, I'm just like, "Put this over there," like, "Do that," or, like, because I have kids, and I tell them to do stuff all the time, so
perfect place
I'm
for you to
constantly telling
practice.
them to do things. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't label, I guess that's something I could work on when it comes to, like, the day to day, but to work, on work, I'm good at it.
Yeah. Now it's fantastic that you recognize where you're good at it, because you can leverage the fact that you're good at it to
Mm,
help you in other areas. It's not like you're completely lacking it. You have this skill. It's just in one area of your life and not in another area of your life. And essentially you want to like grow that neural network in your brain. And so you
mhm,
can think about, what's my thought process when I use labeling in a strong way? Like, how does my brain approach labeling stuff on my computer or in business? And how can I use that same thought process to use labeling in everyday life when I talk to my kids, etc.?
yeah. I did wanna go back, I don't know if we covered it, but what was the core issue of you not being able to read or think properly?
Yeah, so for me, it wasn't actually one specific thinking skill, it was multiple thinking skills together, but it was very highly related to like the reading comprehension. So then it affected my ability to read. And that requires multiple thinking skills. You have to hold one thinking skill is called holding two or more pieces of information at once. But if you forgot the beginning part of the story by the time it comes to the
Mm.
end, you're gonna have a hard time with that, right?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So what do we do with most kids? We just like send them to more reading tutors on reading comprehension, and we just like make them answer more questions on reading comprehension and just read more books and answer more questions. But it's like, why are they struggling with it? And so when you can train the brain to hold more pieces
Mhm,
of information at once, then it becomes a lot easier. I will say, as an adult, the reason why I got so passionate about this was during my training, I improved specifically the thinking skill of categorizations. And this was the root
mhm,
cause to a lot of challenges I was having, even as an adult. And once I improved that thinking skill, I saved over 10 hours every week. I tripled my business. I was able to think forward and like plan 6 months, a year ahead. And all that I couldn't do until I improved my thinking skill of categorizations. So sometimes you can pinpoint it down to a specific thinking skill, and sometimes it's just multiple of them.
Is categorization, is that kinda like, because when I think categorization, I think, like, compartmentalization. Is that similar or no?
Yeah, so it's exactly that, but there's two parts to it. when usually when we think of compartmentalizing, we think of like a big group and splitting it into small groups. So it's like a big bag of marbles and like sorting it into color, or like,
Mm-hmm.
right, um I'm trying to think of like another business example. Like you have like all your documents, right? And like
Yeah.
splitting them
Yeah.
into things. But it actually works the other way also.
Mhm.
So that way of taking a big group and splitting it into groups, I had no problem doing. For me, it was a challenge the other way, specifically when the items were abstract. So, yeah, if you give me a bunch of groups of marbles and ask me what's this big group, like taking the small groups and putting it into a big group, if you gave me a bunch of marbles, I could say they're all marbles. Or even if you give me a bunch of animals, right, I could say they're all animals. But when you gave me a bunch of tasks on a to do list and told me to put them in three big groups so it'll be the most efficient way to organize them, that I had a challenge,
Mm.
right?
Well, that does seem harder, to be
Yeah,
honest.
exactly. So it's actually,
Even just thinking about it now,
yeah,
like now,
it is more challenging and it's
yeah.
okay. Like all the thinking skills, there's a like a lower version of it, right? Like an easier way, like where we can do it. That's why
Mm,
like we all use all of them. Question is, at what point do we get stuck?
yeah. Do we actually use
At
it?
what point do we get stuck? At what point, like, is it too hard,
Oh, get
right?
it
So if you
stuck.
gave me those
Yeah.
marbles, that I could do. But if you gave me those tasks, that's where I would get stuck, right?
Oh, and then just, like, give up or something,
Exactly. Exactly. We just say like this is
and we
just too
don't know.
hard.
That's true. That's how I felt with because I had a personal YouTube channel, and I didn't know what direction to take it. I know I still wanna do, like, self-development stuff, but I just got kinda stuck. Like, I don't know um, what content to make, like, how should I go about it? Um, so yeah, I haven't made content in, like, a month on that channel.
Yeah, this is a good thing. Can we break it down for a moment? Do you mind? Let's
What do you
like
mean?
show people how it applies practically. What?
What do you mean?
If you're open to it, we could like connect
Oh, so I
that
was
challenge
making
to your thinking
content
skill.
every
Yeah.
week. I was making just, like, personal development content and also content for my real estate business because I have a real estate license, but I do it, like, part-time. I'm not, like, full-time. So I was making that 1 video a week and, like, 2 shorts a week, and then I just got to a point where I kinda just didn't know what kinda content to continue to make, and I just got kinda lost. So I haven't made any content in, like, a month because I'm just like, I don't know what like, there's so like, because self-development is, like, a big umbrella, and then there's different, like, paths you can just like you were saying, there's different roads
Yeah.
you can take under the big umbrella.
Yeah. So if you think about coming up with new content ideas, what is required of you to come up with new content ideas?
Well, my process, I usually do research, and then I watch other creators in the same niche, whatever, however you say that.
All the same thing.
Yeah, tomato, potato.
Right?
Um, so yeah, I usually look at the big influencers in my niche, and then I ask myself, like, could I do something like that, and how could I do it differently? Or, because I like I really like the creative process of creating content. Um, but I just want to, I don't know. I
You
don't know.
just
That's
want someone to give you the ideas, right? Like,
ideas and like a like a partner or something, like a teammate or something to bounce ideas off of, and then like we just go out and do it. I feel like I work really good with like I work good by myself, but I feel like I work better with like somebody to bounce ideas off of.
yeah. Um, it's if we want to go back for a second, that's
But
related to
yeah,
the when I was saying the three phases of thinking, right? So
yeah,
you have
yeah,
the input, right? And the
yeah.
input would be like looking at those other creators, like taking in the information,
Hmm.
and then figuring out if you could do it or how you could make it different or better or put your
Yeah.
own twist on it would come in the elaboration phase where you're thinking about it, you're processing it, the
Okay.
second phase of thinking. Okay. Now, depending on how strong, weak your thinking skills are in that phase and how not just how strong they are, but also like how your brain tends to process information, right? Like if you're verbal, written, etc., which is affected based on how strong, weak your thinking skills are.
Yeah.
Um, it's that is going to depend how easy or challenging it is for you to come up with your own unique ideas or figure out how you are going to take it forward.
Yeah.
So by having the other person there, essentially what you're doing is, besides for
Filling
it
it.
helping you process,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you're using their strong thinking skills. So you have your strong thinking skills together with their strong thinking skills, and
Yeah.
you make it easier.
Yeah. That's I like how you're like breaking down my brain right now.
Can you tell that this is what I do all day?
No, that's it. That's it. Yeah. I feel like it would just make it easier, but I don't
Right.
know. Yeah. But I know we only have a
Mhm.
little bit of time. You have to go in like 10 minutes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I had one more question and then I have final questions that could be quick.
I love
Um,
this.
but my first question before it relates to the whole uh thing we were talking about. But is your name ST?
It is.
Just straight up
Yeah.
ST?
Straight up. It's really short from like ESTY or like Estee Lauder, right? That's like in French,
ST?
ESTEE, Estee. So like in English is Estee. But in
ST?
school I decided four letters was too long. And
ST?
so I cut it down to two.
See,
Yeah.
when you say SD, is that SD?
Yeah. Estee. However, I have all the versions of it. Whatever you say is fine. My
SD and then
brain will perk up however you say it.
Rappaport?
Rappaport. Yeah, you pronounce the T.
Rappaport?
But again, also I got so many versions, so I don't actually care.
Okay, ST. What is the unconventional way to learning more efficiently? Or did we already
Yeah.
cover it?
So a big part of it is most definitely improving how you think. But what happens is when we go to school, we get taught to memorize information. We don't actually get taught how to think. And that
Mm,
obviously happens
yeah.
with these 28 thinking skills. But the best way anyone listening to this can start improving their brain's ability to learn and to take in information and to make it easier for them to process what's coming in is to do what's called mediation. Just a fancy name for asking yourself questions or asking the people around you questions to help them come to conclusions instead of just telling them. So if you're taking your kid outside and it's raining, don't tell him to put on his raincoat or boots. Ask him, tell him it's raining outside. What do we need to do? You're
Hmm.
training his brain to think instead of just following orders and taking what he's saying at face value. That's on a little kid
Yeah.
level. For yourself, it's the same sort of thing. When you have a challenging situation, you're like, I'm not sure what to do. I got this email and I don't know how to deal with it. Or this letter from the IRS, and I'm like, how am I going, like, what am I going to do about this? Ask yourself questions. What do I
Yeah.
see? What's going on here? What's the problem? How do I move forward? Etc. And based on those answers, you continue to ask yourself questions until you come to the conclusion.
No, yeah, that's really good because we're programmed in school to just do as we're told, or we're told what to think, not necessarily how to think. I don't know if you've ever read Jim Quick's book Limitless,
Yeah,
but it's really good.
I agree. I agreed 100%.
He tells
Like,
you like how to learn, and that's what you really should. I think that's what the school system should really be implementing, to be honest, is teaching kids how to learn, how to find what they like, what they dislike, their strengths, their weaknesses. And then I honestly think society would be better off when if kids were taught that, and then I think they would figure out what they're more passionate about sooner than be lost at 30 or 40 or even like later, be lost and don't know what to do because they weren't taught how to learn properly.
yeah, completely agree with you on that. Completely.
But we could move on to because I know you're a busy woman. So we can move on to my final questions, which can be quick. I mean, they have to be quick, but usually I could we like break it down sometimes, but uh anyways, what's your biggest regret if you have any?
I don't know if I have any. The only thing that I could think of is not like becoming myself earlier, like I was sharing in the beginning about like still like trying to fit in and do things like that.
Mhm.
Though I don't know if it's possible because I needed to go through that process to come to that conclusion. But anything I
Yeah.
did as an adult or like any actions I took as a kid, like things like that, I don't regret them. Not at all.
Yeah, because your regrets you learn something from.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who or what has made the biggest impact in your life that makes you who you are?
What would most definitely be this 4-year STEAM method of optimizing my brain, improving my thinking skills, and just the belief in potential and human potential. We so often like think that the way we are is the way we'll always be, right? Like I have this challenge and I can't dance, so like I'll never be able to dance, but like it's actually possible and you're able to do it. So the 4-year STEAM method would be my answer.
Can you quickly explain what that method is?
Yeah, so that method is like includes everything we spoke about today. So
Mhm.
it covers the whole concept of the 3 phases of thinking with the 28 thinking skills. It covers the mediation. It covers the growth mindset, the believing in human potential, and it has more stuff in it. But like those are the foundations. And so being on the receiving end of it as a kid has drastically like changed my life. And then during the training, it like changed my life in a whole nother way. And so to answer your question, it has had the biggest impact on my life.
What has been one lesson that you learned the hard way?
Oh, one lesson I learned the hard way. I feel like every lesson you learn the hard way. I'm a really big believer in like, don't tell people, like let them be able to figure it out themselves, including in these lessons, or then the conversation becomes like, what happens if a person is about to jump off the cliff? You tell them, but that's a conversation for another time. But one thing that does come to mind a lot
Yeah.
is a bit of a business one, actually, and just because I want to like not only say things about the brain because that's what we've been talking about the whole time. So just to say something a little bit different, but has most definitely been niching down. When I started this, I was just like helping everyone, all ages, all stages of people, helping them optimize their brain. And then it like, so I was like, okay, you, got told you need an inch down, and had a resistance to it. So I was like, okay, I'm doing just adults. And then from there, I got told that I did an inch down again, and it got and had a resistance again.
Mm,
And it was like just entrepreneurs, and then same process until I had went to really focus on ADHD entrepreneurs.
mm-hmm.
Um, and honestly, that has, like, on a business perspective, that has helped drastically, like drastically. And I just keep on thinking about all the coaches and people that I've paid money to previously who told me to do that, and I didn't listen to them
Oh, you didn't listen to them.
until eventually. Now I do. Now I specialize in
Yeah.
ADHD entrepreneurs. Um, but it took me many years until I got here.
No, I think the ADHD one is good because it resonates with a lot of people. Like it's niche, but it's still like I could see it resonating with a lot of people, even people who aren't ADHD and just have trouble focusing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't want to like label myself as the ADHD expert because I was like, this
Uh,
helps everyone, not just people with ADHD. But as you see, I got to have greater impact by us doing that. So that's what we're doing.
that's good. Um, what would one or what would you want to experience in life if time and money was not an issue? If you had all the time, all the money in the world.
I'd love to travel more. I travel a lot now. Um, but I would love to be able to like travel endlessly. Essentially, I love meeting, learning about new cultures and like meeting the people that live there and like getting into it. Like, so not so much just being a tourist. Yeah, the touristy stuff is fun, but like really like getting into it. Like one of my
No,
favorite trips
yeah,
was
yeah.
going to Ethiopia, right? And like living in Ethiopian family, and like actually while I was there, I worked with the kids there, and helped them like with their brain and stuff, but like in it, like in the depth of it,
Immersed.
and those are funnest.
No, I agree. I I love experiencing cultures and the differences that we human species, like how diverse we are, and seeing how we're all the same, but we're also different and unique, you know?
Oh yeah,
And also just see how big the world is, you know?
makes you realize how small you are.
Yeah, for real, for real. And lastly, is there any personal insights on your journey of discovering you that would resonate with the audience?
Personal insights. It's like a fancy way of phrasing that question. Can't think of anything that like people don't already talk about. Besides for this, actually, this is a big one. Um, I don't know if it's directly answers the question, but I think everyone should hear it. So I'm just going to say, take it as you want it. But I'm a very strong believer. You want to solve the root issue instead of putting on a band-aid. So often we have a challenge and we like put on Advil. Essentially, we take Advil for every areas of our life instead of actually solving the issue as to why we have this issue. And the more you do it, the less time and money and effort you'll have to go into solving this problem and becoming a better version of yourself.
Or Adderall. Some people take Adderall for ADHD
Yeah,
specifically.
true.
But no, I agree 100%. Don't put band-aids on to temporarily solve a problem. Figure out the root of the issue, um, and you'll get better. Thank you, Esty. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate the work you're doing, helping entrepreneurs, business people, or just people trying to focus in general. And I appreciate you for coming on. I'm so grateful. Um, is there anywhere you want people to go before we close out?
Wherever you go online, my website, social media would be Life Pix University. So that's Life Pix University. And if you want to take that assessment we spoke about earlier, that's lifepixuniversity.com/brain.
Go check her out. Thank you.